Once upon a time, in the dysfunctional kingdom of Nod, there lived a racist, misogynist boss who threw daily temper tantrums. He became known as Captain Sobel after the abusive, incompetent character on Band of Brothers. I've known this guy for 20 years prior and he seemed to be a decent person and I had a fair amount of respect for him. He started as a worker bee in a section that does financial and accounting work, a very necessary function. He was also an attorney and reserve legal analyst in the military. But the section he was in has a culture that holds their type of work above all others and their management selects a few golden boys who are fed the myth of their superiority. His boss, known as used car salesman, was promoted to oversee several sections and he selected Captes as his replacement to run the financial section. Ux was a guy who was friendly to your face, but a backstabber when you weren't looking. He would promise you the world and then take things from you. Once Captes became part of the managerial aristocracy, his ego ballooned out of control. In reality, the position was the lowest level of manager in the organization. He instantly became arrogant, egotistical and abusive, targeting racial minorities and women, and his screaming tantrums became legendary in the organization. He screamed about people violating minor guidelines while circumventing security protocols for himself. During an intern program orientation, he lost his mind and began screaming at them that, "This is not a babysitting service. I am not here to babysit you." He targeted a financial analyst who was a woman and a minority, screaming at her in public, berating her work in front of others. The kicker was that she was right. She would be in tears on a regular basis and had to transfer. He targeted another woman and minority for a financial report that she made on public transportation. Not anything really exciting, but he screamed in her face in public, "You are going to get people killed." No one in the room had any clue what he was screaming about. The kicker was that she was right. He screamed at a guy who was a minority because the guy dared to use his copy machine. Frothing at the mouth, screaming that the guy needed written permission to use his copy machine. It was something so far out of proportion to the act that people were stunned. He assaulted a journalist who was in a public space, taking photos, confiscated her cell phone and deleted pictures without her consent. She filed a complaint, but it was swept under the rug with just an apology from him. He had an intern who kept begging for work and Captes kept declining. But then, in public, he goes off, frothing at the mouth, screaming that she was lazy and unmotivated. He had another intern who waited outside of his office while he was on the phone so she could ask him a question. Once he hung up, he stormed out of his office and, in her face, frothing at the mouth, screaming that she was spying on him. He even reported her to security. She was the first one to write him up, but it was swept under the rug by used car. The main issue was that used car was promoted and was Captes' boss and they were thick as thieves. Every complaint was met with, "Oh haha, that's just who he is," or "You're being too sensitive," or "You're just making this up." A very good friend of mine was involuntarily transferred to his section in spite of the fact that she had zero experience in financial matters. She had an excellent reputation in other areas and had great success. One day Captes was in her face, frothing at the mouth, screaming at her about something that was not even her fault. There was an emergency call a year prior that I answered 10 minutes late because it came at 4 a.m. Captes blamed her for that, and when she tried to explain the truth of the matter, he put his finger right up to her face and screamed, "You're a liar. Shut up." She described the spit flying out of his mouth into her face. Every day was worse. He, frothing at the mouth, screaming at her about a report where she was correct and he was There were dozens of witnesses and over 30 victims. A month later, he got a call from Washington, D.C. Stand by for the Assistant Director of Inspections and the Assistant Director of Human Resources. It was a Thursday and they ordered him to be in Washington, D.C. on Monday morning to meet with them. He was screamed at for 7 hours and told to get out of their office. He would be demoted pending adjudication of his case. A month later, he vanished and was never seen nor heard from again.